Today, I want to tell an embarrassing story. It's a story about an awkward failure of mine a couple years ago. An event that has both strengthened and improved how I handle certain situations, but at the same time has hindered me in specific other ways. Growing up, my parents always pushed me to play the piano. I think this was just a natural byproduct, given that my older sister did the exact same thing growing up. So we had a piano in our house, and she played it, and she started taking lessons growing up. So when I was born and I started to reach the same age when she started to play the piano, it only seemed natural that I would follow in her footsteps and pick up many of the same artistic hobbies that she did. Right? We did different sports later on, but artistically, we both did piano, and it just made sense. Doing piano, I had this teacher. We both had this teacher, and the teacher, besides just teaching us how to play, right? She always also encouraged us the importance of performance. Because learning how to play piano is one thing, but learning how to perform a piece that you've practiced multiple times in front of an unknown and strange audience is a complementary but still quite different skill. So some of the ways that she had us practice doing this was our piano teacher had a lot of students, and every month or every 2 months or so, we would have something called a recital, where basically it was a large gathering of all her students coming together, and we'd all perform a piece in front of our friends and family of all the students. And while you had some familiar people in the crowd, namely your own parents, listening to you, it was still largely an unknown crowd, and it was my first experience ever performing anything, really. Not just piano, but just any kind of talent, or not even talent, just like this was before I even did academic presentations in front of a whole class. And this is the first time I was performing something and doing something in front of a larger audience that I wasn't completely familiar with. Besides just having the recitals, which were more relaxed because, of course, we're all just supporting each other, we're performing, and hopefully, people enjoy our music, but there's nothing really at stake there. Besides just doing recitals, our teacher also had us do these things called festivals. And festivals were competitions. They were, in a sense, very similar to the setup of a recital, where we were in a room, me and perhaps 3 to 4 to 5 other students in one group, and we would all practice and prepare and play a piece. And the audience would be usually just families and friends of all the performers. But the key difference with festivals were that there was an adjudicator in the room, because this was a competition. There was a judge who listened to all of our pieces after we played them, would come up and give feedback to all of the performers, and then at the end, multiple weeks, maybe even months later, they would come to a decision and be like, this person was the best person in the group, they won the group. And then there would be like a trophy and like a ribbon given out to whoever won or whatever like that, right? So this was more intense than a recital because, first of all, it's a competition. And even though it didn't really feel like a competition when you're doing it, Like, the setup was, as I said, quite similar to just the more relaxed recital. The key difference is that you had someone directly giving you feedback right afterwards, and they would come up and pick through your piece and be like, you did this and that was good, and maybe I think you could have done something else here that could have elevated your piece even more. So the key point is that there's more pressure. Also, one of the key points is that in the recital, since it was more relaxed, if necessary, our teacher allowed you to play the music with the sheet music in front of you, which meant you didn't necessarily have to memorize your piece. And memorization is playing the piece without having the sheet music in front of you. So you're just playing it from your muscle finger memory without having to use your eyes. So sometimes students did that in the recital. There was like a mix. It was usually maybe 50-50. I don't know. It was hard to recall, but one thing was for sure for me. I never did this for the recital because recitals were often a practice ground for me for the actual festivals. Because that was another key difference between the festival and the recital. Because it's a competition, because it's more competitive, and because it's a more intense environment. And because, most importantly, the adjudicator or judge has to listen to our pieces and eventually pick a winner in our group, he also has to look at the music score so that he can actually compare whether the pieces that we're playing, whether we're playing it correctly according to the music score and how well we're playing it. So as a result, you can't really expect to have 2 copies of every music score everywhere, always at the same time, which meant the key thing for festivals is you always had to play it memorized. Because you'd bring your score, you'd go up to the piano, but before actually playing, you go to the adjudicator table, hand them your piano score, and then you'd start playing your piece. And that was the key. Every piece that you played at a festival had to be from muscle memory. So, you, the audience here, I don't know what your background is. Perhaps you've never done piano. Perhaps you've never done any kind of musical performing art. And I think this is not just limited to piano, but certainly a piano dominant thing, I would say, for my limited experience, where playing from memory is just a key component of performance. If you look up any of those famous piano performances online, you can see like the really famous people like Long Long, and there's some other famous pianists that I don't know about because I can only remember Long Long. But if you just search up those people on YouTube and you see their solos that they have when they're playing with an orchestra, they don't have the sheet music in front of them. And oftentimes this is to their benefit because when you don't have to rely on your eyesight to play the music, you're able to divert the energy and attention that you would have used for reading the music into actually playing the music. And this allows those professional pianists to actually, play it more passionately, focus on the details that they maybe didn't or wouldn't have the energy to focus on if they were too focused and they were too distracted on actually reading the piano score when they were performing. And that's the intent in festivals as well. It's a competition, but really it's probably for those aspiring pianists who want to become performers, right? It's the playground, the little kids' playground for the aspiring performers of tomorrow to get their first reps in. And if you want to prepare for that, you want to simulate the environment, and a bare minimum requirement is performing from memory. So, with all of that in mind, performing from memory seems daunting, doesn't it? Especially if you've never done it before. Let me say, you're right. It is quite daunting. And it's a very difficult process to even describe how it happens, right? When you're learning a piece, you learn with the score first, of course, because you don't know the piece. So you're going to be looking at the score to know the notes and all the timings and all the different articulation that you're supposed to put into the piece as well. Whether you're supposed to play soft or loud at a certain place, whether you're supposed to play staccato or you're supposed to have a bit of pedal. All the artistic details are in the score. All the notes, the important things that you're actually playing with your fingers, are in the score as well. And those, well, if you didn't know the piece before, and even if you did know the piece before by ear, it's difficult to just translate that to playing it with your fingers if you don't have a score. How do you get to the muscle memory place? And this is what I was saying. It's difficult to describe. Really, muscle memory, and this isn't just limited to piano or any artistic venture, anything that you repeat over and over again, eventually your whatever appendage that you're using, in this case for our piano, it's our hands and our fingers, they're doing the same actions over and over again, and our bodies will recognize that and begin to remember that. Our muscles will begin to remember the same movements that we've done time and time again. So when it comes to the next time where we have to do it again, it doesn't require as much brain power anymore, and unconsciously our hands, our muscles are able to replicate whatever it is we've done so many times in the past to do it one more time. So the scary part here, as I noted, is it doesn't require that much brain power anymore. It requires a lot of trust. It requires trust in your body that your body will follow through and will remember what is needed, what comes next. I just finished playing this little section. Okay, the muscles know what comes next. The muscles know that I finished this. Now we're moving on to the next section. And we know how to start the next section. And after playing the first few notes, we know where to go from there. And we know also what kind of emotion to use, what kind of articulation to use, how we should play this piece. It's not just the notes, it's also all the details in between that our muscle memory remembers. And if you think about this logically, as I often did, this is scary. Your brain is not in control. In a way, your brain is you, which means if your brain is not controlling what you're doing, you're not controlling what you're doing. It's like some unknown entity, some unknown force, just the unconscious nature of yourself is controlling your body, and you're just along for the ride. And I've often felt when I've been performing, there's been this feeling and there's been this moment where I'm like, holy shit, I'm just playing right now. And my mind is literally thinking about, holy shit, I'm just playing right now. Like my mind is not focused on the piece itself. I'm having stray thoughts, just random thoughts that isn't about the piece itself. And somehow my hands are still going, my fingers are still going, and I'm still playing the piece. And this disconnect, it's when it really feels scary, right? Because your hands are going and you suddenly feel this disconnect where your brain's like, I'm literally thinking other thoughts and I'm not in control. I don't know what is going to happen next and I can't control it. I have to simply trust my body. I have to trust my fingers to know what to do to get me through the rest of the piece. So the question is, our bodies are not perfect. We're not perfect. We're human beings. What happens when the trust is misplaced? And maybe not even misplaced. What happens when you trust your body, but your body fails? And your muscle memory runs out and you forget. This is this was such a crippling fear of mine. And I wouldn't say it was actually, maybe I'll rephrase that. I wouldn't say it was a crippling fear, but it was a thought that I've had when I started practicing without the score, when I started practicing with memorized pieces. I was kind of aware of this concept. I was like, my brain really is not in control. I can't remember exactly at every point where my fingers are supposed to be, so I have to trust my muscle memory. But what happens if that fails? What do I do? I got to answer that question one time, and this is the event that I'm talking about. It was a festival. And I was performing. I'd given the score away to the adjudicator, as I've done multiple years before. And this was maybe in my junior or senior year of high school. So it's not like I was an inexperienced player at that point. I'd gone to so many recitals and festivals and played memorized pieces, and somehow my body had not failed me throughout. And most of the times, your body doesn't fail you. Being in all those recitals and festivals, you are also listening to other people perform, right? And especially when you're in festivals where it's required, lots of the people are all also playing by memory. And it was honestly quite rare to have times where people would just straight up forget where they were and would have to have the score so then they could continue, right? It happened before, and each time that it happened, I've been like, thank God that's not me, because I would die of embarrassment. I wouldn't know what to do. And I think if I was up there when I was younger and hadn't developed in the way that I had to where I was when I was a junior or a senior, I most definitely would have just broken down, crying right there in front, which isn't a bad thing. It's good to show emotion, but I don't think it was what I would have wanted. And I think that would have embarrassed me more, because no matter what is healthy in the general health sense, that's different than what society views it. And, men and even people in general crying, showing tears in these embarrassing situations. It's not something that everybody wants to see, right? So in that way, I can be glad that this happened near the very end of my piano playing career in high school. But what really happened? As I was saying, it's just like any other festival that I'd done before. I gave my score to the adjudicator, and I was up there and playing. And as had happened at many other festivals before, I had that lucid moment in the middle where it was like, I'm thinking thoughts, but my fingers are going, right? I'm realizing that I'm literally along for the ride, but there's nothing I can really do here because it's my fingers that are controlling everything. And my brain here can only think thoughts, but can't really pick up from where we are if something does happen. And I was thinking those thoughts, and then the thing that I feared the most happened. My fingers just stopped. They just forgot where to go next. I hit a wrong note, and that's how it just spirals out of control. You forget one part, and then once you're at the wrong place, all the other subsequent memories, they're now jostled out of position, and now they're not readily available. It's a domino effect. If you miss the first domino, all the rest are gonna be missed. Or maybe I should flip the analogy. If you hit the first domino, where hitting over the first domino represents the first mistake, it's gonna knock over all the other dominoes, and that is all the subsequent mistakes. It means that I'm missing all the rest of the muscle memory that comes afterwards because I made that first mistake. It's already deviated me off the path of muscle memory, and now I'm in new unknown territory, and my body doesn't know what to do. And I think the most heartbreaking part was I was at the very end of the song. I remember this was in the last 2 lines. There were like 8 measures left. And measure is like a small containment of a unit of the amount of music in a score. For those who don't know what I'm talking about in piano, it's like a little box with a certain number of notes. It's a way to measure how long a piece is. And I had only 8 measures left, which is very close to the end. And this happened. And I remember I didn't know where to go next, right? I played the wrong note, and then from there, my muscle memory failed me. I tried again. I tried to pick up from these little checkpoints that you set, because, it's impossible to remember with your brain where to go every single time at all places in the music, at every measure in the music. But it's still helpful to have checkpoints, places where you often start from. And from there, I can use my brain to direct me to put my fingers in the right places to start. But once I start from the checkpoint and the journey starts, it's again reliant on muscle memory to take me the rest of the way. So after I failed the first time, I went back to the last checkpoint and I tried again. And I got to the same place and I failed again. My muscle memory couldn't remember what to do. And I tried it 1, 2, maybe 3 times. And then I gave up. I couldn't, my muscle memory couldn't do it. There was nothing remaining for me. I just sat there. And I didn't know what to do. I just sat there. And after a small, awkward pause, the adjudicator finally spoke up and came over and was like, "Do you need to see the score?" And I had to say yes. And that was incredibly embarrassing, because I had become that person that had forgotten where they were in the middle of the piece. I'd seen that before in festivals, and I thought, thank God I'm not that person. Well, I'm that person now, just sitting there, not playing. Everybody's watching. The whole audience is watching. The adjudicator's watching. The adjudicator now has to stand up from where they are, bring over the score, help me out to finish the piece. And it's so embarrassing and awkward. It is so embarrassing and awkward. What are the effects of this? As I said, introducing this event has helped me in multiple ways, but it also has restricted me in one peculiar, specific way. So how does it help me? Well, now whenever I do any kind of public performance or public speaking, I'll always know as a past experience that I have experienced what's the worst you can experience when I'm doing anything public. And that worst feeling is that embarrassment of completely messing up and having everybody just be watching you, listening to you, and the awkward silence when it's like, what are we doing? The awkward silence when everybody, they're too nice to really say anything. They're all audience members. They don't want to, make you feel bad. But you're feeling bad because you literally just messed up in front of everybody. You don't know what to do. You're just standing there like a dumbass. Just standing there like a dumb person, not knowing what to do. And this is helpful whenever I do anything public now, because I'm like, I know what the lowest of the low is. I've been there. So if it happens again, I know what to do. In that situation in the festival, I tried my best to get back on track, but I couldn't. Eventually the adjudicator came over and I finished the piece out. It was embarrassing as heck, but life went on. The adjudicator gave comments. She talked a little bit about what happened, but not a lot. She didn't dwell on it. She dwelled and she focused mainly on the actual parts of the piece that I'd played and feedback that she could give there. And in that sense, I was very grateful for that, right? It would hurt a lot more, it'd be a lot more embarrassing if she really was just focusing on that the whole time. And everyone is, even though it's a competition, it's a supportive environment and they all want us to grow and be better, right? So of course they're not gonna dwell on those things that are really only negative. I already know that it's embarrassing. I already know that I shouldn't have done that. And I'll be able to fix that myself. So she helped me in the ways that I could be helped. And I think one of the worst parts of it after the experience was that, I had to walk back and leave the place where the festival was held with my parents. And my parents were in the audience there. And luckily for them, or luckily for me, my parents, even though they're very hard on me and harsh, they understood that, this wasn't the time to berate or, give me more shit, because the public embarrassment was already enough. I wasn't feeling great, and they didn't have to say anything because they already knew that I wasn't feeling great. So I appreciate that, at least from them. But I think the key is I felt really embarrassed in the moment. I felt really embarrassed afterwards when my piano teacher was there as well. She saw the whole thing. My parents saw it. I was embarrassed afterwards when I had to talk with them, and it was like, yeah, that happened. And they had to comfort me and be like, it's okay, it's okay. And even though all of us were knowing, it's not really okay. In the grand scheme of things, it's okay, but you really just fucked up your chances in the festival, because remember, it's a competition. So yeah, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, as I said, it was okay. And I think that is the mindset that this embarrassing event, has really given me, that has been so helpful. It's the knowledge that you mess up so hard, life goes on. And this isn't always completely applicable, this kind of situation, to every kind of public possible embarrassment situation that might happen, because first of all, the audience that I had was, very specific and very supportive. Most of these people I'm never going to see again, so it doesn't really matter that I messed up in front of them. They'll see it and then they'll forget it in the past. It won't be a sticking memory. The only people that will be a sticking memory to will probably be me. Even my parents and my piano teacher, they'll maybe think about it a little bit, but it won't be a core memory to them. So it really only affect me. And if you can really embrace that kind of mindset to any public performance, public speaking that you have to do in the future, you know that even if you bomb, even if you mess up so bad, life goes on. Your friends aren't going to think less of you. They want to be nice. They know people make mistakes, and they're going to accept you, and they're going to appreciate the good stuff that you did there. So really, it's only going to be for you. And once you've done it once, as I have, and you've realized it's not so bad. It's embarrassing in the moment, but you learn from it and you move on. And eventually, it doesn't even become that strong of a memory. It's just something that comes up when you need a podcast topic. It's not something that you bring up all the time. Once you realize that, it's okay to mess up. The fear of messing up should not outweigh all the other positives and the excitement, the joy, and energy that you'll get from actually public performing or public speaking. And that event that happened to me being able to experience the lowest of the low and understand that this lowest of the low really isn't that bad. I can still move on. It's empowered me to be more confident and to really take a lot of the opportunities that I would have, that I could get with public performance and public speaking. Because instead of being afraid, I don't want to do this performance or to speak in front of all these people because I might mess up. Instead, you think about it like, I want to do this. And even if I mess up, it won't be that bad. So it's worth it to do it. And that's the good that's come from this embarrassing event. Now, before I end this, I will talk about the one specific thing that this event still hinders me on. And that is public performing of a memorized piece with piano. Ever since then, after that, I never did another festival. And I think I still did recitals, but I never did a festival. And the festival is where it's that more competitive environment where it's absolutely necessary that you have the memorized piece, right? And even now, when I still have a piano and stuff, I don't think I could go back to that environment. That high stress environment where it's a competition, where you need to be on the top of your game and able to perform and to win. And that involves trusting in your muscle memory. I don't know if I can ever get back there, because now I know that my muscle memory is not infallible. It can fail. And with that thought, this fact that I know, it makes it tough to go back to that kind of environment. So, yeah. This embarrassing event, it's helped me in a lot of ways. It was embarrassing then, but it's not as embarrassing now. And it's helped me. It's a story I can tell. And it's not all sunshines and rainbows, because now I think it's really restricted and probably stop me and will stop me in the future from ever performing really seriously in front of lots of people again. But that's okay. Not everything can be 100% well afterwards. And I'll take the positives that came from it, because I think the positives are more than the negatives.